Friends, hello, this is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the podcast where it's just two writers in conversation. That's what they call it. They call it In Conversation, unscripted. I don't really prepare anything in advance. I just want to pick the brain of the person I'm talking to. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes they're repeat guests, which is what I had the fortune of having today. But before we get to today's guest, just a note. Oh, my dog is growling in the background. Oh, what is that? Oh my God. God forbid somebody delivers a package here, Scully. All right. Anyway, you might have heard a low growl in the background, but I'm not going to retape this. Before I get to today's guest, just a note about my company, Unbound Writer. I do one-on-one coaching with authors. I also have a series of online courses, and I also offer writing retreats and workshops. So you can learn all about that at unboundwriter.com. I would say most of my revenue from Unbound Writer comes from one-on-one coaching, and I've been doing a lot of developmental editing, reading manuscripts and giving very detailed feedback. Not necessarily line edits unless the person's looking for that, but just edits around, is this something that is going to catch an agent or editor's attention? And I love doing that because even with my own work, we can never see all of our own flaws. When I turn something into my agent or my editor, they point out some really great things that need to be changed and makes the story better. So I provide that service for others as well. You can learn all about it at unboundwriter.com, and you can even just schedule a free consultation call with me to see if we're a good fit. All right. So today I had the pleasure of talking to my good friend, Wendy Walker. If you don't know Wendy, and you absolutely should know Wendy if you are a thriller and suspense reader, Wendy has written a lot of shit. That's the high level summary of Wendy, but she is a multi best-selling author with a lot of content out there, a lot of great novels. All Is Not Forgotten, Emma in the Night, The Night Before, Don't Look for Me, What Remains, American Girl, et cetera, et cetera. And her newest book is Blade. And, I got the pleasure of being able to see this last year before it released. And it's a fantastic book. And it delves into the world of competitive figure skating from the perspective of very young skaters, teenage skaters, that which was actually Wendy's world once upon a time. So it's a very personal book to her. And we talked a lot about that in the podcast. Wendy also is the creator of Audible Originals, which this was a fascinating part of our conversation because she goes into detail about creating Audible Originals and then the actual production and recording and direction of it and what that takes and how a lot of it is, for what they just put out, a lot of it was just unknown. Are we doing this right? Is this the way to do this? I'm talking in particular about her latest Audible original release, The Room Next Door. So it's fascinating to hear that process. And we also spent a fair amount of time talking about, something that we do talk about a lot on this show, which is all the other things that you have to do as a writer. How do you promote yourself? How do you gather a team around you? How much money should you spend? All those kinds of things. So we get into that a lot because she's got a lot of people working with her right now, kind of helping her on social media, amongst other things, and publicity as well. So we get into that nitty gritty as well. This is the kind of conversation. So Wendy and I are good friends. I don't get a chance to talk to her all that often. So you'll hear at the end of the episode after we do our storytelling, I just kind of cut it off so I could stop recording and we could just chat. So we probably chatted for another 45 minutes. So it was great to catch up with her. This is my conversation with my dear friend, Wendy Walker. Do you ever have these moments? I've had this happen a few times where you're on I think particularly either an editorial call where there's more than one person involved or a PR marketing call where there's a team involved and they start talking to each other and it's all about you and the
Yeah.
shit that you just made up. And then it becomes, for me, all of a sudden I get a little out of body. Like, this is
Yeah.
so weird. Like, they're having, like, these people who I didn't know prior to X whatever ago are having this conversation about something that I just made up. And now they're figuring out a way to put it into the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like kind of like I don't deserve that in a way, but it's also
Yep.
out of body. Like, that's just weird.
Yeah, it's that whole imposter syndrome thing. And yeah,
It is.
I was I was struck in this marketing meeting because it's Audible and Thomas and Mercer. So I kind of have two publishers now because I've been doing so much work with Audible.
Right.
So they
Those
are
under kind of the Amazon umbrella.
they are, but they're also two independent companies. So they have
100%.
totally different teams and their work, they are coordinating, but they really are independent teams and you know run their own businesses separately and but coordinating now. But they it was just so like you said, it was interesting to see them interfacing and talking about the book and about me and me as like a marketing tool, like the
Right.
video shoot. And when we did this video shoot, they rented out an entire ice rink, an outdoor ice rink. It was beautiful. They actually had, and they had the Zamboni clean it twice. So we had clean ice, for like different
Wow.
segments. And, there was a whole team there. We had hair and makeup. And I can't even tell you, like, it's embarrassing how stressed out I was about what I was going to wear
Right.
because I'm not like, I like will live in my pajamas if I can. I am
Right.
not
That's
like,
who I am
I'm not
too.
like, you've known me for many years. Like,
You're
I'm
not
not
a
a,
sequin girl, is what you're trying
no,
to
and
tell
I'm
me.
not a, oh, look at me and what I'm wearing,
Yeah.
but I was like, I don't want to look, you know, just bad. I don't want to
Right.
look like, I mean, this is my whole body. It's not just, and I'm
You don't want to feel
skating.
people to feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed for her.
Yeah, because the whole thing is like, oh, look, and she's back on the ice, and you don't want people going, ooh, that's maybe
Right.
not a
Trying
good
to
look,
reclaim her youth.
you know?
Yeah. But you're in great
So,
shape. So, and you can
well,
skate.
thanks.
So it's like, obviously, I think somebody would have given you a heads up if they're like, I think this is a bad look.
But they're like, you can tell like they have the whole list of their shots, right? And they're so professional. And so
Right.
you're doing it out of order. Like, okay, now you're gonna stand here. We have 5 shots in this spot, 4 shots over here, and they're doing a total of 5 different videos for things. So the shots are, and I had my lines memorized, so that was great. But I was very aware that they are doing this for in their mind getting the right material for their films, right? These little videos. And I am a vehicle for the content and it's not so the hair and makeup person. I'm like, can you just like, cause she's, watching, like, if there's anything you see where like, my hair is wildly out of place or my
Right.
shirt is like something sticking out, like,
Uh,
can you be the person who's like, this is embarrassing for Wendy? Like, yes, you got your shot, but like she,
yeah.
whatever, like it's like food in your teeth,
And
like
did
nobody's
anything
gonna
come up?
tell
Did she
you.
ever say anything?
She ran down a couple of times with hairspray and she's like, hold on. And she's like getting my hair back down.
Well,
And I
that's
felt like
great though.
it was great. I mean, I felt very pampered and very, you know, it just felt good. Like you said, like, wow, people are going to a lot of effort to bring this story into the world.
Yeah.
And,
It's
yeah. And
it's
then,
it's very out of body because I think, and I know you've been, writing full time longer than I have in terms of, having left your corporate
yeah,
job. But it's weird because when you have meetings that are corporate, basically meetings, and they're familiar to you because you've been in that context, but they're talking about just something you made up in your vision and not just the company's direction that you don't usually care about anyway.
yeah.
It's just all of a sudden it just hits you weirdly, like, like they shouldn't be spending so much time on
Yes.
this.
What are you guys doing? Like, go do a real job. Like, go do
Right.
something that's important. Like,
It's
you're
very
right. Why are you spending
strange.
all this time with me, like, on this story?
Right. But
Yes, for
but
sure.
I
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
I definitely so I definitely want to spend time talking about Blade first and foremost because it's a great fucking book. And
Oh, thank you.
Wendy, we know each other. I know, I know you're a great writer. And so it's like when you sit down to read a friend's book and you know that they write well and you've been engaged with their stuff before, you have that expectation. And
Right.
it's almost easier maybe to get disappointed.
Yeah, it is, I think. Yeah.
And I'm reading Blade, and I knew a little bit from when we first talked about your relationship with skating as a youth, and
Yeah.
some difficult times through that. As you hear the story of all kind of um, Olympic bound athletes, right? It's a cauldron, and mixed with being shipped off to this is your life and these are your new kind of parents, and here's your competition, and you're whatever you are, you're 15 or you're 16. It's just
Yeah.
this perfect volatile mix for kind of destroying a kid.
Yeah.
Or many different things can happen. And so I'm reading this book, and I had this sense of like, I have a feeling that this is a book she's wanted to write for a while. And my sense was it was a book that needed to be ready when it was ready for you to write.
Yeah.
And you get to a certain age where like, I'm ready to write this, but it felt very personal to me,
Yeah. It
reading
was. So yeah, I mean,
in the
I
greatest way.
thank you. Yeah. No, thanks for all that. So I actually never like it was my agent really who,
Oh,
was like,
interesting.
yeah, I never thought I would write about this head on. And I think for a couple of reasons. First, it feels like very specific material. So most of my books deal with childhood trauma and backstories, of why people are the way they are and get into
Right.
situations that land them in a
Right. I think you and I
psychological
are very
thriller.
similar like that.
Yeah, so I mean, and I was well aware of why I'm interested in that and always have been. And when I was, a lawyer, I wanted to get into family law. And then when I was in family law, I wanted to focus on, the really tough psychological cases and children and all of that stuff. But I just thought, who's going to be interested in this? Like it's so specific. And and I remember when Lane Fargo said she was writing a book about skating. This was years ago. And I was like, I had a Zoom with her. I'm like, I'll tell you everything I know. Like, I'm never going to write about this ever. Like, and, she did a ton of research and has been following skating a long time. And she wrote The Favorites. And I just, even then, I was like, I don't know. I'll just never write about it. And then when my agent, we were just thinking of what the next book should be and I was new. I just started working with him and he said, "Well, wow, that's really interesting about skating." And that's a world, like he's very focused on world building.
Yeah.
And I had never really seen my books that way. For me, the world was always inside the character's head.
Right.
So, I was like, well, I'm going to put them in a normal setting, just an, pretty average setting, and maybe some crazy things happen to them, but they're just going to be in like the world. And so it was a new experience for me to do it, but also in how to write it and having to really dive into a description of a world instead of just what was going on inside the characters' heads, which is what I had always focused on in my books. So this was sort of a combination of those things. And it was so yeah, it was in some ways like a book that it was like finally time to just deal with it head on, but also really difficult, right?
Yeah.
So we
Totally.
talk about, okay, here's this material you just made up. Well, this I didn't even know how to dive into this material. And I ended up just writing out my entire history, just like bullet points,
Hmm.
to sort of talk things over with my agent. Um, and and I've dedicated the book to him because this book would not be here without him. And from there we culled like which stories or which sort of aspects of my experience can be fictionalized in a way that will work with a thriller plot. Obviously, no one was murdered when I was skating, and but
according to you.
yeah, right. And what will be the most interesting use of the material in a fictional way.
Right.
And that was actually harder. It's like it's so bizarre because here's all this great material to mine, but sometimes it's easier to just make things up.
You can be more objective about it, I think.
Yeah,
From a thriller author brain, you can say
right.
this is objectively taut and propulsive. It's like, when you're reading, when somebody's writing a memoir, it's very personal to them,
Yeah,
but it might not be interesting to anyone else. And that's a hard feedback to give to somebody
right.
because it's a
Yeah, like you
catharsis.
think it's interesting and you
Right.
think what you went through is interesting, but actually it's kind of not that interesting. Or it's like it's something that's a lot of people have experienced. But yeah, exactly. So I always felt like, well, who's going to find this interesting?
But I mean, it was
So,
suggested the fact that it was like that's what I would need. I would need an agent, an editor, you know, to say we think this would be interesting. I mean, I have zero interest in anything in my life. So and everyone's like, "Oh, you write
I
what
I
you
have a I
know."
doubt that. I doubt that.
I had a very milk toast childhood, but I so I love writing what I don't know because that's what's interesting to me. I don't like writing about places I know or people I know. I just like to make everything up. And yes, I think it is easier to be objective
Yeah.
about it. And you might pepper in observations that are your own, obviously, or maybe small biographical details. Um, but here it's inescapable, right? Because I've always
Yeah.
hated when people say, "Oh, you sound just like this guy in the book." That's why I started writing from a female point of view because I hated that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But you are clearly, not only are you clearly linked to the story, obviously it's been fictionalized to great lengths, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, but you're leaning into it because it's it's a great promotional tool.
Yeah.
This is the world that I experienced. And that's got to, does that make you, I'm just curious, does that make you more vulnerable to like, I don't know, the random shitty Goodreads
Yeah.
review or whatever?
I have to being totally honest, I don't know what his maybe it's just getting older, but I there was a time when I would have written this and would have been like on like the edge of my seat, like what are
Yeah,
people gonna
yeah,
say? What are they gonna and I hope people like the book,
right.
but
Of course.
I have not had one moment of, oh my gosh, what if somebody is like,
Yeah,
says something about, whatever it is, even people who knew me back then, like, oh, I can't believe she wrote this or whatever
right.
it is. I haven't had one moment of that.
That's great.
I feel very, uh, like it's now released, right? So
Yeah, right,
it's out
right.
there.
It's not in your control.
Yeah, and when you go through like the first time I wrote it and gave it to Dan, I was like, oh, like I'm terrified. But then after you start massaging and editing and editing and editing, and it just becomes you become more, I don't know what it is. You just it works itself out, I guess.
Yeah,
And
I think
you
it's a
know,
confluence of the fact that you've published a lot before
yeah,
and age. Because
yeah,
I was just writing about this. I'm like, I think at 55, you really just stop giving a shit
yeah,
outside of your circle, right? And your
yes,
circle can be pretty big, obviously. But I
yeah,
think, but I'm with you, so right. So I don't show it to anyone until my partner sees it, but then my agent is the first professional eyes
yeah,
on it. That's at my most nerves wracking because
yeah,
this is
totally.
somebody who's thinking about the market.
Right.
Same thing with the editor. But I think
Yeah.
you get to the point then, you know, it's sold. They want it. They love it.
Yeah.
We edited the hell out of it. They helped me make it better. And yeah, and if I can make
Yeah.
60% of the readers really happy with it, great.
Yeah.
You know, so you just don't
Exactly.
go down that rabbit hole of review. You want the trade review. It's funny, even with Tell Me What You Did, like I got a shitty Publishers Weekly review followed
Really?
that same day by a starred review from Kirkus. And that was like a
Yeah.
great duality. I'm like, yeah, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's how I
That's
am as a
just
reader
how
and
it is.
everything too.
Yeah. No, it totally. And yeah, in a lot of ways, writing this book and sort of getting this material out there, being totally exposed. I mean, in the past, I would have people say, "Oh, is this character based on that? Or is this character based on your mother, your sister, your friend, your community? Did this happen to you?" Um, and in the back of our minds, we're always like, "Well, I don't know," like
Right.
I'll never tell. Um, but now that this is out there, I don't know. I just I don't know what it is, but I'm in a good, and I actually, what has helped me so much is is really having somebody like culling and curating my social media. So I see personal things that are, written to me, but I'm not on there doom scrolling, seeing
Yeah.
negative reviews, seeing anything negative. That has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really been like, that's a whole other topic of conversation of what social media can do to you when you're in an artistic
Right.
profession, and maybe even any profession. But that has helped a lot because, like you said, I stay in my little world, which is
Right.
my friends, my family, my editor, my agent, and of course, you see reviews, you see how things do, the bigger, the trade reviews and things like that. But not having daily, like, I don't know, like weighing yourself or measuring yourself, every day, hours a day against other people, what other people are doing, what's out there in the
Totally.
world.
Yeah, you got to
So,
find, and I'd love to kind of explore this with you a little bit because my observation of you in the last, maybe even just in the last year, has been that you are leaning in hard to, hey, I'm hiring help.
yes.
I am all in, which
Yeah.
is I'm a big fan of that too. And I've done that selectively, not only with social
Yeah.
media, but with podcast assistants and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the way that your PR and certainly a third party PR team. I think you're with Megan Beatty,
Yep.
who's great. I work with
Yep.
them a
Yeah.
lot with the podcast, and Stephanie Elliott is
Yeah.
my favorite people in the world. Um,
Yep.
but the way that I approach social media is like very selfishly, right? I actively go on there to post and to interact with people who have tagged me in something.
Yes.
I
Right.
almost zero times log on to something and then just scroll randomly.
Right. Yep.
Unless it's like TikTok and I know I'm getting like 1980s nostalgia videos or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's very important to be very interactive. Like if somebody says something nice, I will always respond.
Yeah.
And
Same.
if you're on
Yeah.
Instagram, they usually only post nice things.
That's true. Instagram. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
But it's,
you,
it can be brutal to post something, and even with this wonderful woman that I'm working with who's young and, understands all the TikTok and all this trends, and she just sends me a list of things to film, and she'll send me an example, and it's usually these trendy, like, for your page things, like lip syncing these things. I'm like, what is this video? And I'm
right.
like doing these lip syncs, and I'm out there with my boyfriend, like, we're filming these things together, and he's such a good sport about it. Um, but I feel like that is more, I feel more exposed doing that than writing this book
Right,
because
because it doesn't feel
I'm
necessarily
like doing this
organic.
lip syncing and all this stuff. And sometimes it does well, and sometimes we get like 20 views and then it gets pulled. And I'm like, oh gosh,
I mean, that's the thing though. It's like I was told a long time ago by a PR team member, it's like, you don't have to do everything.
Yeah,
Find something you like enough, find something that you can be
yeah,
competent at. And so like TikTok is something that I'm not great. Like
yeah,
I make a lot of video content and I can just throw it up on TikTok. So it looks fine, but in terms
yeah,
of following people and the algorithm and making sure
yeah,
people are following, it's like and I'm not against it. I just this is what I would need help for. So
yeah.
have
And
you
yeah,
have,
yeah,
just tell me a little bit about this person and like you're investing in somebody to help you with this,
yeah.
and I'm sure it hasn't been super long that you've been doing this, but have you seen results? Have like it's taken time off your plate. In some cases, it's added more time because now you're doing videos.
Videos. Yeah, I think it's taken a lot of time off my plate. Now she
Uh,
does all the graphics now. She does all the posting and I approve all the copy and all of that, but she goes on and handles all of the posting and responding. And unless, again, if something's really directed to me, like a DM or something. But it's really like following the trends, trying to see where to place things. And I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm getting more solid on TikTok. My goal on TikTok is really just to have a presence there.
have a
I
pulse.
don't
Yeah.
ex I think the difference between Instagram and TikTok is that with TikTok as an author, and I only know of two authors who have succeeded at this. Really one who where you become so popular that then your books are sort of merchandise for your fans, where your
Right.
fans are like, I will read, and then they love your work, but they come to your work
Yeah.
because of you and the content you've created instead of your book gets into book talk, right?
Yeah.
And then people want to know more about you,
Yeah.
so they come to you on your personal page because your book went viral in the book talk community.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, especially with romantasy. And, it
Right.
happened with Taylor Jenkins Reid, Colleen Hoover, of
Of
course.
course. Yeah.
You know, her books went viral there, and then people went to her content, and then she stepped up her content. And she was already active on Facebook, but it was really the TikTok that I think pushed her book sales, into the stratosphere. And Geneva Rose is the one who really cultivated content, and then her followers found her books, loved her books. Her books are amazing. But she's the only person that I can think of in the author community where people just freaking love her content because she's so good at it, so genuine, entertaining, and fun to watch. And she just knows how to do it. She's such a
Right.
natural at it. And then she had all these books, she had all of this IP that was just sitting there ready to go. And it was just a beautiful, perfect storm. But that, like what she does, she's like a unicorn, I think. So I'm
Yeah.
not
And you're
trying to
already
do
talking about
that.
somebody who's a talented writer. Anyway, it's not like they were
Oh
a
yeah, no,
TikTok
she was all,
sensation
yeah.
and had to figure out how to write a book.
No, she already had I
Right.
think she had like four books already out. So but for me, like I will never be able to do anything like that. People are not never going to want to watch me and my content, but I just want to be out there and have the book talk community aware of my books and me,
Right.
and like, oh, well, if they, I'm just trying to have a presence there. Instagram is my more serious, I think, platform where I have a decent number
100%.
of followers and, you know,
Yeah.
but it is funny. Like I did this video, which I actually did myself, of piecing together past and present. And when I first got back on the ice, and
Mm.
like shocking, like I was such a shock that I couldn't just. It was terrifying actually that I couldn't skate. I felt like I had just gotten on the ice for the first time in my life, and that
How
had
many years
never.
had it been?
I think it'd been around 15 years, but
Okay.
from when I quit when I was 16, so that was over 40 years ago
Right.
was when I quit, but I would go back on the ice, like once a year. I would, or even like if a few years went by and then I'd be like, I haven't skated in a few years, I would just still be able to go out and do stuff. And after I'd even be able to do spins. And I mean, I was doing a lot of my jumps even into my 20s. I would just be, oh, whoa, look, I can still do a double flip. Woohoo.
Yeah.
It would just be there.
Yeah.
And then I would taught my kids. And then when they lost interest, I think it was about 15 years ago,
Wow.
maybe
Yeah.
12 or I don't know. I think it was 15 years ago, but a really long time. And I've gotten older in those years in a
Sure.
way that's really significant, right? So
Right.
muscles and I mean I'm in shape. I run, I do yoga,
Yeah,
whatever,
totally.
but not the same, not
Right.
using the same muscles. And those connections, the brain body connection, the muscle memory was was disconnected.
Right. It would have to be
Oh my
reestablished.
God, it was shocking. And it did, like within a matter of minutes, it started to reconnect and I
That's
could
so
feel
weird.
it. It was so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, I made this video of just past and present and talking about the book and just circling back to social media. So that video, which I made for Megan, for my publicist to send out so people could see, to media
Right.
outlets to get interest in the book. And here's, the connection between Wendy's real life and the book. And that video, when we released it on social media, like on TikTok, it went up to like 8,000 views. And on Instagram, it was like 1,000 views.
Yeah.
I'm like, what, TikTok likes
Do you know
that?
how much work this was to put together?
I know, like Instagram was like, meh.
I
And then
know. You
TikTok was
never
like,
know what's
woo.
going to hit. Like
You
totally.
just don't know.
Like
I thought TikTok would be finding it so boring because it was clearly something that was, I was manufactured and I had scripted it and,
yeah.
but whatever. Who
I know.
knows?
I know. But I think you've always been, in my observation, very forward thinking about like, yeah, writing is one of the hardest things I have to do, but is just one of the things I have to do.
Oh, totally.
And, I've
Yeah.
always had that belief, even from my first book when there was, nobody knew who the hell I was. I hired my own PR team because I just thought like, if you can afford it and if you can be kind of as smart as you can be, which is hard to do because you have no context, and
Yeah.
find a good space, it might get you into the conversation. They still have
Right.
to love the book. The book still has to have certain magic in it. People have to talk about it, but it could elevate you above a certain ring.
Yes,
um,
totally.
and
That's
and
true.
same thing with everything else. It's like, it doesn't mean it's going to make it happen for you, but it very well might not happen at all if you don't do any of those
Don't.
things.
Yeah. And I look at it like an investment and I look at it a little bit like it's the cost of doing business, right?
Right.
So if you're running a business, making widgets or whatever you're doing, you can look at it like, oh, I have a sale. I'm going to take every penny and save it, because I don't know if I'll make another sale. Or you make a sale and you say, okay, well, I'm going to take 50% of it and I'm going to do some advertising and maybe I'll even, try to, scale up my production and get a bigger manufacturer, whatever it is, you make an investment in your business. And so I think as writers, it's, oh my gosh, every advance, it's like, I just gonna put it in my savings account and under my mattress and hold on tight because you just never know what's coming around the corner. But I feel like thinking about it that way can limit you. Like you have to make an investment and some things are going to be
Yeah.
worth it and some
Right.
aren't. And you don't know. That's the other thing too. Like what made the difference? Was it the publicist I hired? Was it the social media person I used for three
Yeah.
months?
You can't
Was
measure
it
ROI on any of these things.
you cannot measure ROI. Back I remember one year I was doing all these like Facebook boosts and I was just like boost, boost, boost. And that book, I think I spent more money on that book doing like, paid stuff and
Yeah.
private publicist, all that. And that was my lowest selling book of
Right.
all my books. So like,
But
but it
without
built
that
my social
investment,
media.
it might have
Yeah,
helped you. I mean,
right. You don't
I'm
know. You can't,
everyone's got a
Sure.
different financial situation. I'm a firm believer in, if you're a writer, first of all, don't quit your day job.
Yes, yeah.
Until you can show that maybe there's something. There will never be any in perpetuity
Right.
promise, right?
But there is a tipping point where you feel like for me, I knew I couldn't keep doing my day job and
Right.
try to take the ball and run.
Well,
I felt
particularly
like,
with your day job was, I'm sure it's
yeah,
just
being a
yeah,
lawyer and a single mom and having my three kids and
right.
wanting to, really spend time with them because that was 10, almost 11 years ago
Yeah.
that I quit that job. So
Yeah. It's amazing.
but yeah, I mean, it's for everybody, it's different, right? It depends on what your other situation, your responsibilities, if you have
But I
kids,
think you
you
have to
have a
treat it
house.
as a startup company. Like you have to be like,
Yeah, you
I'm willing
do.
to lose money for years because
Yeah,
everything's an investment into the brand. As gross as that sounds, is absolutely
yeah.
true. And at some point it'll pay off, but I'm going to make sure, if it doesn't, that I haven't
Yes.
spent the food money and the college
Yes,
money
right.
and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff. And so you figure out a
Oh,
way
yeah.
to make it work. I mean, and you don't know what's going to happen, but I think
You
you
just
do
don't
have to
know.
invest. Yeah.
And I actually I feel like it keeps evolving and I
Yeah.
keep, but this is the first time in my career where I feel like things have gelled in a way that feels really solid.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of that is because of the work I'm doing with
Oh,
audio.
yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. You're
That
balancing your portfolio.
balancing the portfolio, but also this, the I'm starting to really see where I'm adding value and not where it's not just about being lucky on TikTok and or being but where my name is associated with certain things
Right.
and where people are starting to connect the dots and not just like, oh, it's just another thriller, but it's like if you want this type of book,
Right. Here are the names in that
here
group
are the
that you can
name and
rely
here is
on.
right. And it's really, it feels really good to have that and
Yeah.
it's guiding what I'm writing next. It's informing my decisions on what I'm leaning into in the book. Like I'm just finishing another book right now in edits, not final edits, but edits on the first draft. And and I thought very carefully about what was successful about The Room Next Door, which was my last Audible original.
Right.
And this is not written. I mean, that book was written specifically for audio, and I think that's part of whatever magic that book had. That it was the format that I wrote it in that was kind of really cool for audio, which is very different
Right.
for print books.
Totally.
So it's different. This is a, different. Blade is a traditional print book, but it's really, I don't know, I feel like, okay, this is where we're going and this is what's working. This is where everything has come together for in the past 10 years, everything I've built. This is the road it's led me to, and
Right.
it's a great path, and I love it. It feels comfortable. It feels like I can do it. I don't have, maybe it goes back to the imposter syndrome that you were talking about. That is really like lessened for me in the last year.
Yeah.
It has
Me too.
really gone down. Yeah, for you for sure. You've had an incredible year.
Yeah, it's funny you're talking about what worked before, right? Because one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to chase the market, right? But we do want
Yeah.
to listen to success. And if,
Yeah.
if people start saying, oh, a Wendy Walker book is X, Y, and Z, sometimes those variables are surprising to the author. You're like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
like like for me, for example, it's like short chapters. Like I write short chapters because I have the mind of an 8-year-old, but the way
Yeah.
that people consume it is like it's propulsive. It's I have to know what happens next. I'm like, I just ran out of shit to say in that
Right,
chapter.
in that chapter, I know.
But
I
that's
think of you,
but
by the
that's
way.
data.
I always think of you now when I'm writing and a chapter ends and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, no, I don't. I don't need any more pages or words.
I don't need to
Carter does it.
describe
I can
anything.
do it. So, and
Well,
but it is funny because as much as you are that way, my brain like it loves symmetry and like order. So I'll go back and I'm like, oh, and look, all the chapters are around 5 pages, or all of them are around
yeah,
7 pages. Like,
yeah.
because my brain it just naturally does it. But I do think of you often. But yeah, so yeah, it's definitely a great aspect of your writing. But go ahead. So yeah,
Well,
you
and
are.
I was just thinking, like, this is a rare conversation that I have on this podcast where we're talking about confidence and success and the
Yeah,
lessening of imposter
I
syndrome.
know.
But I think it's a very important
Yeah,
thing to discuss because this doesn't mean, to your point earlier, this doesn't mean your next book's not going to fail. This doesn't mean they're not going to buy
right.
anymore, but whatever. It's a very volatile industry and things are changing all the time. And AI is a nightmare and all this fucking shit. But you get to a
Yeah,
point where you have confidence and self respect, and you're
yeah,
like, I'm not perfect, but I know how to do this and I know how to listen and take notes. And I know to surround myself with very smart people who are going to give me great advice.
yeah.
And I've seen in the past that when all those things come together, I can produce something that is commercially viable.
Yes. Yeah.
And that gives you this confidence of like, yeah, it all might go downhill, but why would I spend time worrying about that? And I think that's
Yeah.
also an age thing. There's something about mid 50s
Oh my gosh.
that you're just like,
Eh,
here's the
like
pair
what?
of
Yeah.
dice that I'm rolling, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And, I'm
Yeah.
still going to sleep well at night.
Yeah. And it's so this, and I think about like, you know, how you really do sometimes have to take those leaps. And for me, like writing Blade was definitely a leap. But I felt very secure because this is something my agent has done with other authors, writing about these like unique worlds, like worlds, not like fantasy worlds, but very specific worlds. So I felt like I was in good hands there. But with The Room Next Door,
My cat.
which I was also, writing around the same time. I mean, this has been a crazy year because The Room Next Door just came out in October,
Oh, no,
and
I
then
know
Blade
it.
is
It's done
coming
very
out.
well.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah, it's so. But that book, when I was, Audible, we talked about what the format would be, and I thought I would do something similar to Mad Love, which was my last work for them, which was like 4.5 hours and was fully scripted, almost fully scripted. I snuck in narration through like a letter and this one sort of what you would call a voiceover if it was in television, but a little one person narrating certain scenes to set them up. But it was a very, scripted format. And they said, well, we want something that's more narrated and a full length novel. And
Hmm.
and this idea, I was like, well, the whole reason that I've never written this novel with this idea is because I couldn't figure out how to fill a whole
Right.
novel
Right.
because of with this premise, because it's hard to maintain the sort of whatever the mechanism for that
Yeah.
long. And so writing it, and so I just decided to write it in this format, and I just sort of let loose on it, like thinking the whole time, what would sound really good in audio? Like what would be
Fascinating.
really cool? Like if
That's
I'm
great.
listening, what's going to make me just be seeing it in my head where I'm like missing my exit on the highway. And I so I wrote it, and it's a really when it was finished, and my producer there, Matt Patterson, and the director, Kevin Collins, and it was all great. We did, I sat in on all of the recording sessions. We had 33 performers in it.
That's
Um,
wild. That's
it
so
was
weird.
amazing. It was so much fun. It's one of my favorite things to do because it's like a working script.
Right.
So, I'm listening to it and I'd be like, beep, I'm sorry, but could we just change that?
Can we take it from the top?
It just doesn't sound very good. And,
That's so weird.
and like, beep, oh, I didn't realize I used the same word 4 times in that paragraph. Didn't
Right.
catch that. And it's when you hear it performed by someone else. Anyway, so it was fun to do that. And sometimes things just didn't sound good. And then we'd ask the actor, like, what phrase would you use there? Like what phrase or how would you do that scene? And then we would just change it on the spot. So that was great. But then it came when we had the pass of the dialogue, we had all of these, it was like hobbled together, like narration, and then one character would just come in. So I mean, this is like geeking out on the writing stuff, but like you'll appreciate this. Like, like let's say you're writing about, your mother, and you're like someone who has a really narcissistic mother who would have these horrible conversations, or would
Hmm.
all of a sudden just be in the middle of a conversation, just have one dagger, a
Right.
zinger, and you're just and the narrator's describing it, and instead of saying the narrator saying, and then my mother looked at me and said, why can't you just be a good girl?
Yeah.
Instead of that, you hear a mother come in and say that line.
Right.
So you're now
That's
the
so cool.
character's explaining how traumatic it was. Then you're experiencing it because you're hearing the mother like
Right.
come in. And
Oh,
but it's like
so
this
much
little
fun.
pop, and the three of us were listening to it and trying to decide how to sound design it. So do you add room tone to that? Do you add like a little transition sound effect so
Right.
you
Without being
know?
distracting at the same
Right.
time.
And when it's just one line and not a whole scene or just two or three lines that are in the middle of this story that's being told by one of the narrators, what do you, and I liked it just, I'm like, just leave it. I like it the way it is. And then, I think someone wanted room tone, someone wanted maybe music transitions. And there was a moment where I was like, holy shit, this thing's gonna fail. I wrote this beast. I wrote this beast of a whatever manuscript, whatever it is, that has not been done before. No one knows how to do it. Like
Yeah.
here we are, this
Right.
very experienced director, very experienced producer. We don't know. And the sound people, they're like, what do you want us to do with this? They've done, thousands of audiobooks. What do you like? And I was like, holy shit, this is gonna
That's all
suck.
on me. Yeah.
And this is on me because I
Yeah.
wrote it. There's like, and nobody knows we don't know how to produce it.
Right.
And we went down, I mean,
And
we
yet
went
it
down to the
worked.
wire. We ended up bringing in a music fixer, like at the
Yeah.
end, who came in. And for 2 weeks, we had 2 weeks till it had drop dead date. We were going around the clock. We'd give him a chapter, he'd add music, bring it back, we'd listen, he'd do another
Oh my
chapter,
God.
and we're cycling through. We have spreadsheets with all of our comments, like mind-numbing work around the clock. We didn't even hear the last pass. They were like yanked it from our clutching white-knuckled hands. We didn't even hear the last few edits we made because we sent it to the sound guy and we didn't have a chance to get it back. They're like, we're done. It's midnight. It's midnight. You're done. That was it. And I'm telling you, like, another time in my life, I would have been, you know, like sidled up to a bar down in Scotch and freaking, or something. I would have been
Right.
like freaking out, like
Have you gone through back and listened to the thing in its entirety?
I haven't actually. I
Yeah.
haven't. I've listened to bits and pieces,
Well, it's
like,
like reading your own book after it's been
yeah, I
published.
can't. I mean, it is actually, I did have to listen. I mean, I listened to the near final pass and I loved it. But
Yeah.
every piece of music, every sound effect in that piece was scrutinized by three professionals and changed multiple times. Like we put a lot of care into it. But, and then it came out and I was surprisingly like okay about it. Like, all right, nothing I can do, right? We did the best we could
Totally. You have to learn to
and
let go.
tried something new.
Right.
So it's either going to fly or it's going to sink, and then
And
I'll
it did
know. And the
great.
next one, and it did when it started like climbing the charts, and like 2 days in, it hit number one on most listened
That's
across
amazing.
all audiobooks,
That's
fiction, nonfiction.
crazy,
Like,
Wendy.
and I know it stayed at number one for like 2 solid weeks, and then it stayed in the top 20 for,
That's
whatever. It's just, but I didn't know. I
right.
had no idea. And that experience has really altered my level of confidence
Yeah.
because I feel like, all right, I must know what I'm doing. And the
Right.
people
And
I'm
you didn't
working
know
with
what you were doing, but you had to figure it out and
had to
you
figure it
figured it
out.
out. And that
Yeah.
does instill confidence because you're
Yeah.
like,
Like, okay,
yeah,
I have the
like
skills.
I'm
I
as
have
smart as anyone
tools.
else, that kind of a feeling.
Yeah. And the people I'm working with at Audible, this team, like, they have the skills,
Right.
and we knew, like, Matt knew to bring in music. He's like, I know, let's bring in music. I was like, great, let's do that. And then, so I feel this level of confidence now, which, yeah, it's a strange conversation to be having because I don't think I've
Right.
ever felt this in my career.
Right. Right. It takes a long time to
So
get there. However,
anyway,
that manifests itself. It takes a long time to get there. Well, Wendy,
yeah.
we're going to wrap up. Before we do,
Oh
we're
my
going to do
gosh, I know I've like
well,
totally
and I want you, I mean, if you don't
gone down
mind, after
rabbit
we
holes.
wrap up and we stop recording, I just want to talk to you for a few minutes just
Yeah,
to
of
catch up.
course.
Um, you
But
have,
Blade, yes, I've been talking about them next door, but everybody, yes, read Blade and listen to Blade. Blade also has an incredible audiobook with Julia Whalen and a full cast. There are some scripted scenes in that too.
that's
So
amazing.
that I also was involved in the recordings and stuff. So trying to tie into that as well. So yeah.
So you have an option because this is an option I give to repeat guests, whether you want to do the storytelling or not.
What do you mean?
The little impromptu storytelling, the making it up part of
Oh
the
my
show.
gosh, I haven't done this in so long. Okay. All right. Da, da,
It's
da, da, da. I guess, okay, I'll try. All right,
Okay.
let me,
So I've got
it's
three
like
books
the,
here,
okay.
and this is the signed edition copy time. So we're going to select one of these books. So we've got Karin Slaughter's We Are All Guilty Here, Harlan Coben's 6 Years, or Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl. So choose one of those.
And wait, remind me what we do.
So I'm going to pick a random sentence. I'm going to read that sentence, and that's the
Yep.
first sentence in like a 2 minute long short story. So we just alternate sentences, crafting a
Okay.
story on the fly.
Okay.
So pick one of those books.
All right, let's do I mean Gone Girl I know, so I feel like I know that so well. All right, let's do the Karen Slaughter.
So give me, and we can do obviously whatever we want with the story. Give me a
Eek.
page number between 1 and 400.
All right, let's do 58.
Okay. So I'm going to quickly choose a sentence on page 58. Um, all right, you can do whatever you want with this.
Oh
good old,
God.
good old Karin Slaughter.
I know. Okay, go
I
ahead.
won't. Yeah, I won't read that one. How about the bigger problem was that unlike every other house on the street, the lights at Dr. Carl's were turned off.
Okay. But as I walked by, I thought about one night 3 years ago when the lights were on and when the shades were not pulled close and when I could see inside and not believe what was happening.
I was only 22 at the time and disgusted with myself for not having moved out of my parents' house. And the long walks at night would give me some kind of independence I think I sought for elsewhere. But mixed with that was my curiosity. And when I walked up to that window that night, having to peek in, the first thing I noticed were the massive animal costumes.
At first, I thought they were on a rack and maybe part of a school play. The doctor had children in middle school, so that was a possibility. Maybe I thought he was volunteering to have the costumes at his house because they were quite large, these animals. And I went closer to see exactly what kind of animals they were. And one in particular caught my attention. It was a black bear, and it was hanging in a way that its arms looked like they were reaching out to grab me. And
I
as
don't,
I
oh, go ahead.
walked closer to the window and thought about those arms reaching out, I felt arms grabbing me from behind.
Padded, furry arms, soft but strong, demanding, spinning me around. I found myself face to face with a ferret larger than myself. I could hear the breath coming through the eye holes, and this thing just stared at me. All right, we fucking just call it there.
We've
We're going
now,
into
I'm
a
like, oh wait,
furry party.
we're writing a romantasy now. I'm like the ferret from planet Zor, where I was once a queen of the Dominion.
We have never had a furry storytelling on this show, so
I love that. That was good.
that is a
That was
first
good.
for
Well, you
us.
brought us there, so that was great.
That is it. That is my conversation with Wendy Walker and the first ever short story about furries on this podcast. Wendy's excellent new release is called Blade. I highly recommend you check it out. And you can order the book and you can read anything you want to know about Wendy at her website, wendywalkerbooks.com. And check out my website, carterwilson.com. for my books, my newsletter, my podcast, all that good stuff. And you can check out my newly redesigned website, Unbound Writer, if you're interested in coaching, online classes, or retreats and seminars, all within the writing world. That's it. I have nothing else to say. That is it for this episode of Making It Up. Another one out just next week. Thanks as always for watching and listening. Take care.